we see a mysterious plate which can also be found in-game. My mom believed that nonsense and managed to make it a reality.
All of these events, all connected to the disc Pokemon, and all created by desire.
Emits the same energy wavelength as terrestrial energy.
And there a child gave me a white volume. That is a book that would ignite the imagination of any true scientist.
No way! What?
About a year ago, I released a theory talking about an epiphany I had with the yet-to-be-revealed disc Pokemon, and it unexpectedly garnered a lot of attention. But there were several portions of that theory that had huge gaps due to the lack of information present, resulting in me firing several shots in the dark in order to make the story coherent. However, since then we've seen the release of more content for Scarlet and Violet, essentially unveiling the final pieces to put together the true story behind the disc Pokemon, Terapagos. The appropriately named Indigo Disc DLC introduces us to Heath's proposed Pokemon, named by him as Terapagos. However, unlike the prior Teal Mask DLC with Ogerpon, the main story doesn't actually revolve around Terapagos, but rather serves as the endpoint, putting it close to Kieran's frustrations with inadequacy. Funnily enough, we don't actually get much information from the main story concerning Terapagos, but just like the base game, there are enough crumbs left over that allows us to unearth its secrets. For example, Terapagos is very heavily implied to be a part of a once common species, as evident by its game data revealing its gender ratio being an even 50-50, despite the only Terapagos available in the game being male. And this is further validated by the Dex entry implying it to be a once thought extinct species. However, what makes this interesting is that their existence as well as the formation of Area Zero's underdepths existed at least 2 million years ago. That's an entire 1 million years before the creation of the Great Crater of Paldea. And with further knowledge that seismic shifts cause the species to virtually go extinct, I think it's likely we see a potential connection here, that the seismic shifts could be responsible as well for creating the crater. However, this is merely conjecture. In fact, this conversation gets even weirder when we factor in the ancients of Paldea, as the Dex entry for Terapagos' stellar form states it to resemble the world as the ancients saw it, which puts into question how old these ancients really are. Reasonably, we'd assume if the ancients knew of Terapagos, it would most likely have to happen before the seismic shifts, but considering the ancients are referencing the stellar form specifically, this has to be after, since the original Terapagos actually didn't resemble the current version at all. The one we see in the present time became this way after changing the energy in its body into crystals and entering a hibernation-like state, as seen in both the game and in the anime. So, if anything, the ancients most likely were seeing a Terapagos that had emerged from this dormant state. This also reasonably places these ancients early enough to predate the Paldean Empire and leave rumors of the hidden treasure within Area Zero. However, there is one other way that the ancients could have potentially seen Terapagos, because as shown in the hidden ending of the Indigo Disc, Terapagos is capable of time travel. Wait a second, doesn't the existence of time travel completely shatter my original theory?
Yup.
Well, sort of. Admittedly, originally I had dismissed time travel too early on and instead focused more on the desire aspect, but nevertheless, the existence of time travel does absolutely change several things, but it also answers many of the flaws in my original theory. That being said, I think it's very important to address the fact that the Paradox Pokemon are still most certainly fake. Game Freak, please. Despite the existence of time travel, it still doesn't effectively explain the outlandish Dex and Paranormal Magazine entries, nor does it explain the difference between the Paradox Dawn fan that Heath saw and the one that Sada and Turo captured. It also absolutely doesn't explain why Koraidon and Miraidon comparatively are much stronger than the other Paradox Pokemon. And with the imagined Pokemon, it's downright confirmed, with the Paradox Legendary Beast trio by nature being literally impossible. So then if the Paradox Pokemon aren't from differing times, then how does time travel factor into all of this? Well, we see at least one instance of confirmed time travel in-game. For now, I'm not counting the time machine since we don't know for sure if AI Sada and Turo actually time traveled, since again, the Paradox Pokemon emerging from it are most likely fake, so it probably didn't send the AI through time. But as we said earlier, the hidden ending offers an instance of time travel where we encounter the original professors. In the process, we trade information, telling them the name of Koraidon and Miraidon respectively, as well as transferring the Briar Book, which informs her of Area Zero's underdepths and Terapagos' whereabouts, which inevitably leads to the research on Terapagos as we can see its dormant state in their rooms. This then leads to the journal entries citing our encounter, and then us capturing Terapagos and summoning the professors all over again. It's a bootstrap paradox where we essentially cause a loop to occur. But what if I told you there's one more loop in the game, and that it involves Heath? When the game first released, I always thought it was weird that Koraidon and Miraidon were on the covers of the Scarlet and Violet book, but I just saw it as simply a video game moment, since they were part of the promotion for the game. But what completely recontextualized this moment for me was when the professors mentioned their original names, the Winged King and Iron Serpent. How would they know if Koraidon and Miraidon were only present after the creation of the time machine? Well, it's because of Heath. He wrote about them in the Scarlet and Violet book. But how does he know about the existence of Koraidon and Miraidon? It's the same problem with Great Tusk and Iron Treads that even Arvin mentions. They can't exist before the time machine, so how does he know? Well, that problem might finally have an answer now. If you remember the Phantom Memory entry, he states how he could recall speaking with someone in an unfamiliar place as if in a dream, which sounds very similar to Sada and Turo's journal entry where they also state their encounter with the mysterious person in an unfamiliar place. And what could potentially solidify this fact is that when he awakens after returning to Area Zero, he's holding a page in his writing, despite the fact that he's never written it. Narratively, if we connect the similarities with Sada and Turo's time travel experience, they receive the white volume from us in the future, thus resulting in the bootstrap paradox. So is it possible that Heath experienced a similar event, where he was transported across space and time to a future where someone, us, gave him the Phantom Memory page from the Scarlet and Violet book that he would then publish in his own book 200 years before? Another bootstrap paradox, another loop. And if he truly did encounter us on that experience, he would probably also have seen our Koraidon and Miraidon, giving him the knowledge to put it within the Scarlet and Violet book, and making it finally all make sense. I can easily see his time travel being caused by his encounter with Stellar Terapagos, as detailed in the final page, as both events mention a moment in which he separated from the rest of his group. So could both of those pages just be in reference to one singular moment? Who knows? And if we do get a future event that incorporates time travel, I wouldn't be surprised if it also answers our question to the mysterious plate found in Area Zero. For Heath found it strange and stated the metal to be beyond modern science. But the image bearing the current cities of Paldea makes it pretty evident that this is most likely from the present time and was potentially transported back in time, making it so that the metal for the plate was 200 years too advanced for Heath. With these mysteries seemingly solved, I think it's only a matter of time before we see everything play out. But despite this, there are still several lingering trails that we don't fully understand and I feel are crucial to helping us complete the story. Kitakami in particular is such a weird hotspot for the terrestrial phenomenon, as we don't fully understand why the crystal pool exists. It's implied that Terapagos somehow is responsible for altering the water through its crystals, but I find it weird that Terapagos would be all the way in Kitakami, considering a huge part of its story is being trapped in Area Zero, specifically the Underdepths. It would only really make sense for it to get there through its space-time travel. For what reason? Who knows? For all we know, it could be another loop. But honestly, a huge part of this mystery makes me wonder the significance of the mysterious man. So mysterious, in fact, that we don't even concretely know if he's dead. When Ogerpon arrives to the cave, it's specifically stated that nothing outside of the teal mask is present in the cave, and that Ogerpon Bro, the fucking truck. And that Ogerpon potentially entered the village not out of revenge, but in search of him, and happened to come across the Loyal Three along the way, thus taking out its revenge. But what makes him truly peculiar is that this mysterious man seemingly traveled from a distant land and was aware of the power behind the crystals, harnessing it with the masks, which leads to the question of, did he travel to Kitakami specifically for the crystal pool? Because originally the story seemed to point to Pecharunt also being aware of the mask's power, but further media showed it to be a victim of others' desire, since as we know the masks garnered a lot of Since as we know, the masks garnered a lot of attention for its jewels. On a side note, I think it's very funny that the third sign mentioned having your soul stolen if you're not wearing a mask, which is a pretty funny joke and foreshadowing for how Pecharunt can't shoot mochi in your mouth if you're wearing one. But anyways, back on topic. The mystery of the man's presence throws a bit of a left turn into understanding what's happening in Kitakami. And as a result, it has brought up several theories, including the idea of him potentially being the ape Pokemon we see in the Scarlet and Violet book. It would also explain why people were frightened by the man, not just the Ogerpon when they entered the village. But again, we don't have enough information for a concrete answer. But it could also explain the distant land it came from, and how it knows about the Terra Crystals since it was present at some point in Area Zero. There's even speculation it could be a mythical or legendary Pokemon since the title for the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero DLC has 4 sparkles reminiscent of the ones present on Stellar Terapagos. And if you notice the colors, it corresponds shockingly well with the legendaries and mythicals we've received recently with the DLC. Blue for Terapagos, green for Ogerpon, pink for Pecharunt, and yellow, our unknown. Granted, this is just a title screen, but I can definitely see this being a potential hint for a future Gen 9 Pokemon. There's just no tangible proof to connect it back to the man or the ape, leaving those mysteries left up in the air. It's not alone though, as there are still some other smaller plot points with unknowns, such as Briar's whereabouts. She's off to find her editor, but her disappearance leaves the story with a secret of what's in the terrarium core. There seems to be heavy emphasis on it as Cyrano fails to remember it, leaving the core an enigma. And it's not like an unimportant plot point either, as it's responsible for the terrestrial phenomenon to occur on lands other than Paldea and the land of Kitakami. In fact, it's even affecting the wildlife by producing herba mystica as hinted at by Amarys, as well as the stellar phenomenon. If there were to be a future event with Heath, I wouldn't be surprised if she would be present for that altercation, or if we could divulge the information to her, which would allow us to learn the secret of the core, since she's the one who built it. And then there's the time machine. Game Freak really thought they were slick, giving us access to the Scarlet and Violet book, the key to activating the time machine, and then not allowing us to enter the time machine? But I know your game. One day we'll be able to get access to that room, and I will be there when it happens. But for now, it's just another blocked off trail. Leading us to our last mystery, the Terra tree present in the Underdepths. Now, Game Freak has done it before where a really cool tree with potential lore implications lead to nowhere. But unlike the others, I do think that this is a hint to a prior revelation. But it all hinges on one question. How important is desire for terrestrialization? A huge part of my original theory was stressing the importance of how desire can turn things into reality. And I vastly overestimated the scale for this, disregarding time travel completely and thus ignoring how the time loops are responsible for many of the plot points. Pokemon games often have themes and criticisms that are present within the story. Gen 8 with industrialization and its harmful effects, Gen 7 with colonization and invaders, and it seemed to me like Gen 9 followed a similar suit, pulling on themes of desire and greed in reference to the historical search for treasure. And it is, as we see characters like the professors ostracizing themselves for their research, as well as Kieran and Briar's obsession with Terapagos, contrasting with the healthier desires as seen with the main 4 characters that even the AI recognize. In recognizing this, I incorrectly conflated ideas together, such as prompting that the AI were potential creations by the disc Pokemon's power, when in reality they're merely powered by the crystal's energy, with their intelligence itself being the result of that desire. I also insinuated that the phantom memory implied a form of mind manipulation, which helped to facilitate its desire-bringing powers, when it most likely is just a product of time travel instead. Failing to acknowledge time travel in general just made discussing Heath very awkward, as it fundamentally changes his story completely. And with time travel's inclusion, it helps to clear up some confusion involving his story. Bars? That wasn't intentional, I promise. On a brighter note, however, there actually is a bit more evidence to show that desire still has importance to the story, with Sada and Turo being strong contributors, fueling this narrative with them literally exclaiming how the Scarlet and Violet book would ignite the imagination of any true scientist, while also revealing that they've had possession of the book since they were children, strengthening that desire. I also feel like Terapagos itself can kinda lean into this desire portion, albeit on a much lesser scale. We know how it adapted to the seismic shifts to survive, to the point where it even formed crystal barriers to block off paths that could lead to it, which also interestingly enough seems to be the guardian that Heath was referring to in the books, protecting Terapagos, the hidden treasure of Area Zero. And this is why I find it so interesting that the tree is present in the Underdepths, as even though it seems mostly like aesthetic, I really wouldn't be surprised if it's supposed to be a hint at the creation powers of Terapagos through terastallization. But still, what reason would the tree have for existing? There isn't really an answer, but you could maybe argue that it could be Terapagos desiring to return to the surface in some sort of way, considering that it has been in the Underdepths for thousands, if not a million years. It isn't too unreasonable, but again, that's just conjecture. I also just think that it's funny looking back, how I based Terapagos on like this Quetzalcoatl godlike figure, when in reality, it draws way more from like Hebrew descriptions of the firmament and Hindu mythology of the world turtle and stuff. But I'll leave that video to Loxton and Noggin, since he can dive into the origins of stuff way better than I can. And while we're on the topic of desire, even though we don't have any new evidence to it connecting to the Treasures of Ruin in the DLC, I just figured I'd mention that the marks in Area Zero overlay with their sealed points, basically confirming that there is a connection, but that's not really anything new. I'm also really surprised that we quite literally had nothing with Kalos at all in Scarlet and Violet. Maybe a whole DLC centered around the part of it was a little too ambitious of me. I guess my desire wasn't strong enough. But the fact that the legendaries weren't present in the Indigo Disc DLC kinda insinuates to me that they're probably gonna do an event with them in the future, similar to the Darkrai Dialga Palkia event a couple months ago. And with Pokemon Day coming soon, I'm not really expecting a DLC 3 for this game. There's a lot of discussion on what it could be, but personally, I don't think Black and White remakes or sequels are coming at all within Gen 9. It just seems way too early compared to other remakes. Realistically, a Johto game is more likely with the current release schedule, but even that could be questionable with how Game Freak have said that they want to tackle future projects in a less linear fashion that they used to do. Granted, this isn't stopping other parties like Ilka from releasing projects, so who knows? Guess we'll have to wait and see within the next 3 days? Okay. So, it's Sunday at 6 p.m. So not even 2 whole days, damn. Man, I wanted this video to get out way sooner, especially since I ended up being busy with other stuff when I started working on it. Talk about poor time management. But yeah, I'm looking forward to what the future of Gen 9 holds, and if you are as well, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I can't wait to see how half of this video is either gonna end up being right on the mark, or age like spoiled milk, within less than 48 hours, no less. So with that being said, I'll see you all next time.